Rain washed the blood toward the diner's back door in thin red rivers. Sarah Bennett nearly stepped into it. She stood beneath the flickering security light with a black trash bag in one hand and her apartment keys in the other, staring at the dark stain spreading through the rainwater. For one suspended second, she told herself it belonged to an injured animal. Then a man's hand moved beside the dumpster. Sarah dropped the bag. The man lay half hidden between the brick wall and a stack of empty delivery crates. His expensive black coat had been torn open, and his white shirt was soaked almost completely red beneath his ribs. Rain ran over his face, through his dark hair, and along the hard line of his jaw. He looked like someone who had fallen out of a different world. Not the world of Millie's diner, where truck drivers complained about coffee and college students split fries at 2 in the morning. His watch alone probably cost more than Sarah made in 5 years. His coat was tailored. His shoes were polished, despite the alley grime. But none of that mattered. He was dying. Sarah dropped to her knees. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyelids opened. The eyes beneath them were gray, cold, and frighteningly alert for a man losing so much blood. His hand closed around her wrist. Sarah gasped. "Don't call the police," he whispered. His voice was deep but broken, each word scraped out through pain. "You've been shot. Don't call anyone. You need an ambulance. No hospitals." His grip tightened. It should have felt weak. It didn't. A pair of headlights swept across the far end of the alley. The wounded man's expression changed instantly. Pain disappeared behind something harder instinct. Calculation. Command. "Turn off the light." "What?" The light. The back door security lamp shone directly over them. Sarah could hear engines beyond the alley, low and powerful. More than one vehicle. The stranger tried to rise. His face drained of color, and he collapsed against the wall. Sarah should have run inside. She should have locked the door, called 911, and let trained professionals handle whatever nightmare had found its way behind the diner. Instead, she climbed onto an overturned milk crate and struck the old security light with the handle of a broom. The bulb shattered. Darkness swallowed them. 2 black SUVs rolled slowly past the alley entrance. Sarah crouched beside the stranger, hardly breathing. Through the rain, she saw shadowed men behind the windshields. One vehicle stopped. A passenger window lowered. "Check behind the diner," a voice ordered. The stranger reached beneath his coat. Sarah saw the outline of a handgun before his arm trembled and dropped. Her heart pounded so violently that it hurt. The diner's metal door stood 3 feet away. Beyond it were a dark kitchen, a narrow storage hall, and the old laundry cart Millie used to transport tablecloths from the basement. Sarah made her decision, before fear could stop her. "Can you walk?" No, that wasn't a request. His eyes narrowed at her. Even half-conscious, the man looked offended by being ordered around. Sarah pulled his arm across her shoulders. She was strong from carrying trays, lifting boxes, and spending 10-hour shifts on her feet. But his weight nearly dragged her down. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and solid beneath the ruined suit. He bit back a groan as she pulled him toward the door. Footsteps entered the alley. Sarah shoved the door open, dragged him inside, and lowered him into the laundry cart. He stared up at her from between piles of clean tablecloths. "This is humiliating," he murmured. "You can complain after you stop bleeding." She covered him completely. The back door opened just as Sarah pushed the cart into the storage hall. A man in a dark coat stepped inside. Sarah froze with both hands gripping the cart. The intruder was tall, clean-cut, and calm. Rain glistened on his shoulders. Another man remained in the doorway behind him. "We're looking for someone," the first man said. Sarah forced herself to breathe normally. "We're closed. Did anyone come through here?" "No." His gaze moved over her uniform, her damp curls, and the cart. Sarah knew what he saw. A tired, chubby waitress with worn shoes, red cheeks, and a cheap name tag pinned crookedly above her chest. Someone harmless. Someone invisible. Men had underestimated her for most of her life. For the first time, she was grateful for it. "What's in the cart?" he asked. "Tablecloths covered in bacon grease. You're welcome to smell them." His expression tightened. From beneath the linen, the wounded stranger's hand closed silently around Sarah's ankle. A warning, or perhaps a promise that if the man moved closer, he would still find a way to fight. The intruder took one step forward. Then police sirens wailed somewhere on the main road. His head turned. "We should move," the second man said. The first man looked at Sarah for another long second. "If you see an injured man, call this number." He placed a card on the counter. "No police. Call us." Sarah waited until the back door closed. Then she pushed the cart through the kitchen, past the dining room, and out the employee entrance beside the parking lot. Her old blue hatchback sat beneath a dead street lamp. She loaded the most powerful man in Chicago into the back seat, without knowing his name. By sunrise, half the city believed Adrian Vale was dead. Sarah only knew him as the bleeding stranger ruining her sofa. Her apartment was on the third floor of a narrow brick building, above a closed laundromat. The pipes rattled, the windows leaked, and the living room was barely large enough for the second-hand couch Sarah had bought after moving out of her mother's house. Getting the stranger upstairs had taken 15 terrifying minutes. He lost consciousness twice. Sarah found a bullet wound beneath his left ribs and another grazing injury along his shoulder. She had no medical degree, but she had spent 6 years caring for her father after a construction accident damaged his spine. She knew how to clean wounds, monitor breathing, manage fever, and recognize when someone was slipping away. The bullet had passed through. That was the only reason he was still alive. She cut away his shirt, packed the wound, and used every clean towel she owned. At 4 in the morning, he began shaking. At 5, his fever climbed. At 6, Sarah sat on the floor beside the sofa with her back against the coffee table, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "Don't die," she whispered. His eyes opened. They were unfocused now, stripped of their earlier control. "Why?" Sarah thought he had not heard her. "Why what? Why do you care?" She looked at him. There was something profoundly lonely in the question. "Because you're here." "That isn't an answer." "It is to me." He studied her face as if kindness were a language he had forgotten. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah." His gaze dropped to the name tag she had forgotten to remove. "You already knew that. I wanted to hear you say it." Despite everything, warmth touched her cheeks. "What's yours?" His eyes closed. "Adrian." No last name. Sarah did not push. When he woke again, afternoon light filled the apartment. He moved with sudden violence, one hand reaching toward his empty waistband. Sarah stood several feet away holding a bowl of soup. "Your gun is on top of the refrigerator." Adrian turned toward her. "You touched it?" "I wrapped it in a dish towel because I don't like guns near my food." His gaze swept the apartment. The single exit. The windows. The narrow hallway. The cheap curtains. The family photographs on the bookcase. "You brought me here. You weren't exactly in a position to choose a hotel. You should have called an ambulance. You told me not to. You listened?" "Temporarily." His expression sharpened. "You always obey strangers?" Sarah placed the bowl on the coffee table. "Only rude ones bleeding behind dumpsters." For a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes. Then it disappeared. "How long?" "About 12 hours. I need a phone." "You need soup." "A phone." "You lost enough blood to fill a kitchen sink." His jaw hardened. Sarah folded her arms. She was wearing an oversized gray sweater and black leggings. Without her apron, she felt unusually exposed beneath his attention. She knew she did not resemble the women who probably belonged in his world. She was soft around the waist and hips, her brown hair refused to remain smooth, and exhaustion had left shadows beneath her eyes. Yet Adrian looked at her as though she were the only object in the room he could not calculate. "I don't take orders," he said. "You do on my sofa." The silence stretched. Then, astonishingly, Adrian Vale picked up the spoon. He ate half the soup before his hand began to shake. Sarah pretended not to notice. "You have someone who'll be looking for you?" she asked. His gaze remained on the bowl. "Yes." "Someone you trust?" A pause. "I thought so." The answer disturbed her more than if he had said no. That evening, every television station in Chicago interrupted regular programming. Sarah stood in front of the screen while Adrian slept. A photograph appeared behind the anchor. It was him, not the pale, wounded man, on her sofa, but a sharply dressed figure stepping from a black car beneath a wall of camera flashes. Adrian Vale, missing after deadly downtown attack. Sarah increased the volume. Business magnate Adrian Vale has not been seen since an explosion and reported shooting near the River North District late last night. 3 members of his private security team were found dead. Vale Industries has declined to comment on rumors that Mr. Vale may have been kidnapped or killed. The report described him as a billionaire investor, property developer, and heir to one of Chicago's oldest fortunes. It did not describe the men searching the diner. It did not explain why police checkpoints had appeared on major streets or why black SUVs had been seen outside hotels, hospitals, and private clinics. Sarah looked toward the sofa. Adrian was awake. He watched her reaction without moving. "You're Adrian Vale." "Yes. People think you're dead." "For the moment, that is useful." 3 men died. His expression changed by less than an inch. "It was enough. They worked for you. They protected me." "Who attacked you?" "That is not your concern." Sarah stared at him. "I smuggled you through a diner in a laundry cart. I think I passed the point where this stopped being my concern. You saved my life. That does not give you access to it." His coldness landed like a slap. Sarah switched off the television. "You're right." She took a blanket from the chair and headed toward the bedroom. "Sarah." She stopped, but did not turn. "You need to leave this apartment." A bitter laugh escaped her. "It's my apartment. Then I need to leave. You can barely stand. I will manage. You'll tear the wound open before you reach the stairs. If they find me here, they will kill you." That silenced her. Adrian pushed himself upright. Sweat shone along his forehead, but his voice remained controlled. "The men who came to your diner weren't searching to help me. They were confirming whether I survived. Once they discover that you lied, you will become useful to them." "For what?" "To reach me." Sarah slowly faced him. "You said people you trusted betrayed you." "Yes." "Then where will you go?" He had no answer. "Outside." Tires hissed over wet pavement. Both of them looked toward the window. A black sedan had stopped across the street. Adrian moved faster than an injured man should have been able to move. He crossed the room, switched off the lamp, and pulled Sarah away from the glass. His arm locked around her waist. Her back pressed against his chest. For a few breathless seconds, neither moved. Sarah felt the heat of his body through her sweater, the controlled rise of his breathing, and the dangerous strength in the arm holding her. His hand rested against the softness of her stomach. Adrian seemed to become aware of the contact at the same moment she did. His fingers flexed once. Then he released her as though he had touched fire. "Stay away from the windows," he said. The sedan remained for 3 minutes before driving away. Sarah turned toward him. Blood had begun spreading through his bandage again. "You tore the wound. It doesn't matter. It matters to me." His eyes met hers. That frightened her more than the car. Because for the first time, Adrian Vale looked frightened too. Not of death, of what her words had done to him. By the second day, Chicago was under an invisible occupation. Men in tailored coats entered apartment buildings pretending to be detectives. Luxury hotels handed over guest lists. Security footage disappeared from businesses. The evening news called it a coordinated response to a possible terrorist threat. Adrian called it a succession war. Sarah learned this after threatening to throw his phone out the window. He had refused to let her contact anyone. He spent hours staring at the ceiling, calculating moves he could not make while cut off from his organization. "You can't stay silent forever," she said. "I can until I know who betrayed me. Your entire city is panicking." "It isn't my city. Then why does everyone act like it is?" His mouth hardened. Sarah sat across from him at the tiny kitchen table. "You owe me the truth. I owe you protection." "Protection from what?" "From knowing too much." She laughed, without humor. "You're sleeping beneath my grandmother's quilt, Adrian. The mystery is losing its effect." He looked down at the faded yellow flowers covering his legs. It was the closest Sarah had seen him come to embarrassment. "My half-brother organized the convoy that was attacked," he finally said. "Do you think he was involved?" "I think Julian has wanted my position since we were boys." "Then why was he organizing your security?" "Because betrayal is most effective when it arrives disguised as loyalty." Sarah absorbed that. "What position?" Adrian looked toward the rain-streaked window. "My father built an organization that controls shipping routes, construction unions, private security contracts, and several businesses that do not appear on tax forms." "You're telling me you're—" "Yes." The word was quiet. "Absolute." Sarah's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. She had known he was dangerous. His weapon, the men in the alley, the control in his voice, all of it had told her that. But hearing it changed the air. "You're a mafia boss." "I dislike the phrase." "That's the part you object to?" His gaze returned to her. "You should be afraid." "I am." Something dark passed through his expression. Then why are you still here? Sarah stood, carried her cup to the sink, and washed it to give herself time. Because fear doesn't make you less wounded. You think compassion makes you brave? No. I think staying after discovering the truth does. Adrian stared at her back. You know nothing about what I've done. No. I have ordered men killed. Sarah's hand stopped beneath the running water. I have ruined families, he continued. I have made people disappear. Some deserved it. Some may not have. You need to understand who is inside your home. She turned off the faucet. When she faced him, her eyes were wet but steady. I understand that a dangerous man is inside my home. And I still won't leave a dying person alone. His face became unreadable. Sarah picked up her coat. Where are you going? To work. No. I've already missed one shift. Millie will come looking for me. You cannot return to the diner. I need my job. I'll pay you. Her eyes flashed. Don't. It's practical. It's insulting. I can buy this building before lunch. Then you can spend the afternoon learning to make your own soup. She reached for the door. Adrian was suddenly beside her. He should not have been standing. The movement cost him. Sarah saw it in the tightening around his eyes. But one hand braced against the door above her shoulder, blocking her path. The apartment seemed to shrink around him. I am not allowing you to walk into a place my enemies are watching. You don't allow me to do anything. His gaze dropped to her mouth. The movement was brief, but Sarah felt it everywhere. Move, she whispered. Adrian did not. His body was close enough that the heat between them became its own presence. His other hand hovered near her waist, almost touching but stopping before contact. Sarah. It was the first time her name sounded like a warning in his voice. Ora confession. A knock thundered against the door. Sarah jumped. Adrian drew the gun from behind his back. Sarah, a woman called. It's Millie. Open up. Sarah exhaled. Adrian did not lower the weapon. She's my boss. She could have been followed. Everyone could have been followed according to you. That is because everyone can. The knocking continued. Sarah opened the door only after Adrian disappeared into the bedroom. Millie entered carrying a paper bag and enough suspicion to fill the apartment. She was 62, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and had owned the diner for 30 years. You look terrible, Millie said. Thank you. You never miss shifts. I'm sick. You don't sound sick. I'm recovering. Millie examined the apartment. Sarah casually moved between her and the bedroom hall. I brought chicken pie. That's very kind. And your tips. Millie held out an envelope. Before Sarah could take it, a glass fell in the bedroom. Millie's eyebrows rose. Sarah closed her eyes. Recovering? A moment later, Adrian appeared. He had changed into one of Sarah's father's old button-down shirts, though the fabric pulled across his shoulders. He looked pale but composed. Millie recognized him instantly. Her face lost all color. Oh, dear God. Adrian lifted one finger to his lips. Millie looked from him to Sarah. Then she slapped Sarah's arm with the envelope. You brought the most hunted man in Illinois into your apartment? He was bleeding. You couldn't bring home a normal criminal? Adrian's mouth almost moved. Millie pointed at him. You don't get to smile. 3 men came into my diner this morning and questioned every employee. What did you tell them? Adrian asked. That Sarah left alone. Did they believe you? I've lied to health inspectors for 20 years. They believed whatever I wanted them to believe. Adrian's expression changed. Respect. Millie placed the paper bag on the table. You need to move him. I know, Sarah said. I have a cabin outside the city. Adrian shook his head. Too obvious. They will search properties connected to both of you. Millie crossed her arms. Then what do you suggest, Mr. Criminal Mastermind? Before he could answer, the building fire alarm began screaming. Adrian's head snapped toward the ceiling. Sarah smelled smoke. Then came the sound of breaking glass from the floor below. That isn't a fire, Adrian said. The apartment door shuddered beneath a heavy impact. Millie went pale. Adrian grabbed Sarah by the shoulders. Backstairs? Through the bedroom. He took the gun from the refrigerator, checked the magazine, and handed Sarah a small black object from his coat. A flash drive. Put this somewhere they won't find it. What is it? The reason Julian cannot afford to let me live. The front door shook again. Sarah shoved the drive into the lining of her boot. Adrian turned to Millie. Go into the bathroom. Lock the door. I'm not hiding while. You are the only person who can tell police Sarah was taken against her will. The phrasing stunned Sarah. Tarkin? Adrian looked at her. If they find us together, that is the story you tell. Another impact split the doorframe. Adrian pulled Sarah toward the bedroom. They climbed through the window onto the rusted fire escape as smoke rolled into the apartment. Rain struck Sarah's face. Below them, two men entered the alley. Adrian stepped in front of her. He fired once at a street lamp. Darkness exploded across the alley. Move. They descended 2 flights before the fire escape jolted beneath their weight. Sarah slipped. Adrian caught her with one arm. The movement tore his wound open. His breath broke against her ear, but he did not release her. Gunfire struck the brick above them. Adrian twisted, shielding Sarah completely with his body. Adrian, down. They reached the alley as a black SUV turned the corner. Sarah froze. Its headlights surrounded them. Adrian stood in front of her, blood spreading across his shirt, weapon lowered at his side. The rear door opened. A tall man with closely cropped blonde hair stepped out. Boss. Adrian did not move. The newcomer's eyes went to Sarah. Who is she? The reason I'm alive, Adrian said. The declaration altered something inside Sarah. The man lowered his weapon. Then get her in the car. His name was Marcus Reed, Adrian's head of security, and one of the few men not assigned to the convoy during the attack. Adrian trusted him. Not completely, but enough to let Marcus drive them beneath Chicago in an armored SUV while Sarah's building burned behind them. The safe house lay beneath an abandoned private club on the river. From the outside, the building looked condemned. Inside, an elevator descended into a world of polished black stone, dim gold lighting, security monitors, and silent men in expensive suits. Every person they passed stopped when Adrian appeared. Some looked relieved, others terrified. No one questioned the fuller-figured waitress, walking beside him in wet leggings and a soot-stained sweater, but everyone stared. Adrian noticed. Anyone who looks at her again loses the privilege, he said calmly. The corridor went silent. Sarah turned toward him. The privilege of what? Eyesight. She could not tell whether he was serious. That was the problem. A doctor waited in a private medical suite. Adrian refused treatment until Sarah had been examined. I'm fine, she insisted. You inhaled smoke. You were shot. I remain capable of making decisions. You remain unbearable. The doctor looked between them with visible confusion. Marcus looked amused. Adrian looked obsessed. Sarah did not recognize it yet. While the doctor reopened and cleaned Adrian's wound, Marcus explained what had happened. 7 members of Adrian's inner council had disappeared after the attack. Vale properties had been seized. Adrian Vale had announced that his brother was presumed dead and called an emergency gathering of Chicago's major families. He plans to be crowned tomorrow night, Marcus said. Adrian lay shirtless beneath surgical lights, jaw tight as the doctor worked. Then tomorrow night he will be disappointed. You're not strong enough to attend. I wasn't asking. Sarah stood near the doorway. She should have felt repulsed by the power surrounding him. Instead, she noticed the scars crossing his back. Some were old and pale. Others looked like knife wounds. A life written in violence. Adrian caught her staring. Their eyes locked. Sarah looked away first. Marcus placed a tablet on the table. There's something else. The screen showed security photographs of a young girl leaving a private school outside Boston. She had dark hair and Adrian's gray eyes. Adrian went completely still. Where did you get that? It was sent to your private account 30 minutes ago. Beneath the photograph was a message. Come to the council alone, or the child becomes the last Vale to die. Sarah's heart tightened. Who is she? No one answered. She looked at Adrian. The Mafia Boss, who had faced gunfire without blinking, now appeared carved from stone. My daughter, he said. Her name was Elisa. She was 7 years old and had spent most of her life believing Adrian was a distant family friend. Her mother, Celeste, had been killed by a car bomb 6 years earlier after Adrian's enemies discovered their marriage. Adrian had removed every record connecting him to the child, placed her with Celeste's sister, and stayed away, except for carefully arranged visits. Julian was one of only 3 people who knew she existed. Sarah understood then why Adrian had remained hidden even while his empire fractured. Appearing publicly would confirm that he had survived. It would also make Elise valuable. You have to get her out, Sarah said. Marcus already sent a team. They know where she is. They know where she was photographed. Her aunt moved her 2 hours ago. You think that's enough? Adrian's gaze hardened. No. He stood despite the doctor's protest. Sarah followed him into a surveillance room where an entire wall displayed cameras from across Chicago. Warehouses, hotels, intersections, private estates. Adrian called his daughter's aunt through an encrypted connection. No one answered. He called again. Nothing. On the third attempt, a child's voice came through. Hello? Adrian stopped breathing. Elise. Sarah turned away, suddenly feeling that she had entered a moment too private to witness. Uncle Adrian? The girl asked. Yes. You said I'm not supposed to use your real name. You're right. Are you sick? You sound different. Adrian closed his eyes. Sarah saw the man behind the empire then. Not soft, not healed, simply terrified. I need you to listen to Aunt Rebecca, he said. She's going to take you somewhere new. Again? Only for a little while. Will you visit? Adrian's hand tightened around the phone. Soon. You always say soon. The accusation was innocent. It cut him deeper than any bullet. After the call ended, Adrian stood in front of the dark screens. Sarah approached slowly. You love her. Love has not protected her. Neither has staying away. He turned. The look in his eyes could have frozen a room. You don't understand. You're right. My father never hid me to keep me alive. Celeste died because of me. And now your daughter is growing up believing you don't want her. His voice dropped. Be careful. Sarah's pulse accelerated, but she did not retreat. You asked why I wasn't afraid of you. I am afraid, Adrian. But I'm more afraid of what happens to that little girl if everyone around you is too terrified to tell you the truth. The silence became dangerous. He stepped toward her. Sarah held her ground until his chest nearly touched hers. You think saving me gives you permission to judge me? No. Then why do you? Because you care what I think. The truth struck both of them. Adrian's hand rose toward her face. He stopped inches from her cheek. Sarah could feel the warmth of his palm. His eyes moved over her features with a hunger that felt less physical than desperate. As if he wanted to memorize the one person who had seen him powerless and stayed. I should send you away, he said. You've said that before. This time I mean it. No, you don't. His fingers finally touched a damp curl near her temple. The contact was almost unbearably gentle. Then the surveillance screens went black. An alarm sounded. Marcus entered. We've been breached. The safe house transformed instantly. Steel doors descended. Armed guards rushed through the corridors. Emergency lights turned everything red. Adrian pulled Sarah behind him. Take her to the eastern tunnel, he ordered Marcus. No, Sarah said. This is not a discussion. I still have the flash drive. Adrian's gaze dropped to her boots. It contains Julian's financial records, recordings, and proof that he arranged Celeste's murder, Adrian said. If I don't survive, Marcus will release it. Marcus looked at him. I never told you I knew how to access it. No, Adrian said. You didn't. The room went still. Sarah looked between them. Marcus slowly lowered his weapon. Adrian's expression turned deadly. The attack convoy had 3 routes, he said. You chose the final route 17 minutes before departure. Julian's men were waiting. Boss, you also knew about Elise. Marcus's face changed. Not guilt. Regret. Sarah's stomach dropped. Marcus raised the gun. Adrian moved first. The shot shattered a screen. Sarah ducked behind the console as the 2 men collided. Adrian was injured, but fury made him brutal. He drove Marcus against the wall, striking the weapon from his hand. Marcus pulled a blade. Sarah saw it before Adrian did. Adrian. He turned, but not fast enough. The blade cut across his side. Sarah grabbed a metal chair and swung it into Marcus's shoulder. He staggered. Adrian disarmed him and drove him to the floor. He could have killed him. Everyone in the room knew it. Instead, Adrian pressed the weapon against Marcus's chest and asked one question. Where is my daughter? Marcus laughed through bloodied teeth. Already in Chicago. Adrian's control cracked. He dragged Marcus up by the collar. Where? Julian has her at St. Catherine's. The abandoned church stood near the lake, surrounded by decaying warehouses and fog. Adrian's men secured Marcus and prepared vehicles. Sarah found Adrian alone in the medical suite, wrapping fresh bandages around his ribs. You can't go like this. I'm going. Then I'm coming. No. Marcus knows about me now. Julian probably does too. That is precisely why you're staying. Sarah stepped closer. You think locking me in a room is protection? Yes. You don't trust anyone here. I trust enough of them. You trusted Marcus. Adrian's hands stopped. Sarah regretted the words instantly, but she did not take them back. I'm not Elise, she said more softly. You don't get to love me by disappearing from my life. His gaze lifted. Neither of them moved. Sarah's breath caught. She had not meant to use the word love. Adrian crossed the space between them. His hand closed around the back of her neck, not hurting, but holding her with undeniable possession. You believe this is love? I don't know what it is. I think about whether you've eaten while men discuss war. I hear your voice when I am deciding who deserves mercy. Every room feels wrong when you leave it. His thumb moved against her pulse. I knew you for 3 days before the thought of losing you became intolerable. Sarah's eyes burned. That sounds more like obsession. For men like me, there may be no difference. He lowered his forehead to hers. The contact was intimate enough to ache. You should hate me, he whispered. I'm trying. Try harder. Then he kissed her. There was no gentleness in the first second. It was restrained hunger breaking through control, his mouth claiming hers as if the world beyond the room had already ended. Sarah gripped his shirt. Adrian immediately slowed. The hand at her neck softened. His other arm wrapped carefully around her waist, drawing her against him without hiding the shape of her body or treating her softness as something to overlook. He wanted all of her. The certainty of it shattered years of quiet insecurity Sarah had pretended not to carry. When he pulled away, his breathing was uneven. If I begin this, he said, I will not know how to want you safely. Then learn. His eyes darkened. A phone rang in the next room. The world returned. St. Catherine's Church glowed with candlelight beneath broken stained glass windows. Adrian Vale waited before the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, as though he had arrived for a wedding rather than an execution. Elise sat beside him in a white coat, clutching a stuffed fox. Sarah watched through a camera feed inside the armored SUV. Adrian had forced her to remain with the vehicles, guarded by 4 men. She had agreed only because someone needed to transmit the files if Adrian failed. Julian's voice came through Adrian's hidden microphone. You look terrible, brother. Adrian walked alone down the center aisle. Rainwater and blood darkened his black coat. Elise comes to me. Julian smiled. You always were impatient. The brothers resembled each other around the eyes, but Julian's charm lacked warmth. He looked polished, elegant, almost kind. That made him more frightening. You survived because of the waitress, Julian said. An ordinary woman in an ordinary apartment. Our father would have found that humiliating. Our father is dead, and soon, his mistake will be corrected. Julian placed one hand on Elise's shoulder. Adrian's entire body tightened. Do not touch her. Elise looked toward Adrian, confused but unafraid. Uncle Adrian? His face changed at the sound of her voice. Julian noticed. So much emotion, he said. You hid it well. You killed Celeste. I removed a weakness. Adrian's expression became empty. Sarah understood now that emptiness was the most dangerous thing about him. Julian continued. Then you created another one. On Sarah's screen, a second camera feed appeared. The diner. Millie was being forced through the back door by 2 armed men. Sarah stood. Millie. A message flashed across the monitor. Bring the drive to the diner, or she dies. Julian had divided them. He expected Adrian to choose his daughter, and Sarah to choose Millie. He was right. Sarah took the flash drive from her boot. The guard beside her blocked the SUV door. Mr. Vale ordered us to keep you here. He also ordered you to protect me. Yes. Then protect me on the way to the diner. We can't. Sarah opened the transmission channel. Adrian. Inside the church, he paused. Sarah, stay in the vehicle. They have Millie. Julian smiled. Adrian's voice turned lethal. You knew? I know everything you love, Julian said. Sarah gripped the microphone. I'm going to her. No. She saved us. Sarah, you don't get to decide who I abandon. Silence. Then Adrian said, take 6 men. Do not enter until the perimeter is secure. I don't have time. Sarah. The emotion in his voice stopped her. If anything happens to you, there will be nothing left in me worth saving. Her eyes filled. Then come back alive. She ended the call. At the diner, every light was on. The familiar booths and chrome counters looked painfully normal beneath the fluorescent glow. A pot of coffee still sat on the burner. Sarah's apron hung on its hook beside the kitchen door. Millie sat in the center booth with one man behind her. Another waited near the register. Sarah entered alone. The guard searched her and found the flash drive in her pocket. "Let her go," Sarah said. The man behind Millie laughed. "You're in no position to negotiate. I memorized the access code." That was a lie. The men looked at each other. Sarah lifted her chin. "Kill me, and the files remain encrypted." Millie stared at her. The front windows reflected black vehicles moving silently into the parking lot. Adrian's men were in position. The guard near the register noticed the reflection. He reached for his weapon. The lights went out. Glass shattered. Sarah threw herself over Millie as men entered from both sides. The diner filled with shouted commands, overturned chairs, and brief flashes of light. Someone grabbed Sarah from behind. She fought, driving her elbow backward, but an arm locked around her throat. A blade pressed beneath her chin. Emergency lights flickered on. The man holding her dragged her toward the front door. Adrian appeared outside. He should have been at the church. He stood in the rain beneath the red neon diner sign, blood staining his collar. Behind him, black SUVs surrounded the parking lot. Sarah's captor tightened his hold. "Drop the weapon." Adrian lowered his gun immediately. Every man in the diner stared. Chicago's most feared mafia boss stood defenseless in the rain for a waitress. "Let her go," Adrian said. His voice was calm, but Sarah saw murder in his eyes. "You chose her over your daughter?" the man asked. "No." A second figure appeared behind him. Elise stepped from the SUV holding the hand of one of Adrian's guards. Julian's plan had failed. Adrian had used the church confrontation to delay him while a rescue team entered through the crypt beneath the altar. Elise was safe. The captor's grip shifted in surprise. Sarah bit his hand. Adrian crossed the distance before the man recovered. He struck him once, pulled Sarah free, and turned his own body between her and the weapon. A shot cracked through the diner. Adrian Vale. Sarah screamed. He remained standing long enough to fire back. Then he fell into her arms. The image froze inside Sarah forever. Adrian Vale kneeling on the rain-soaked floor of Millie's diner, his head against her chest, while armed men lowered their weapons, and an entire criminal empire waited for her to tell them whether their leader was still alive. Sarah pressed both hands to his chest. "Stay with me." His eyes opened. "You keep saying that because you're terrible at listening." His mouth moved faintly. "Sarah, no. I need no speeches, no final words. You are not dying in my diner. It isn't your diner." She cried and laughed at once. "Then you can argue with Millie after surgery." He survived. Julian did not escape the church. Recordings from the flash drive were released to federal authorities, news organizations, and every criminal family in Chicago before sunrise. They proved he had ordered the original assassination, Celeste's murder, and the killing of 3 council members who refused to support him. Adrian could have buried the evidence to protect the Vale Empire. Instead, from his hospital bed, he ordered everything released. Properties were seized. Officials were arrested. Alliances collapsed. For 48 hours, Chicago waited for war. It never came. Without Julian's network and with Adrian's remaining loyalists enforcing a fragile peace, the families turned on one another politically rather than violently. Adrian sacrificed nearly half his empire. He did it without hesitation. Sarah remained beside him until he woke. The private hospital floor resembled a luxury hotel guarded by men who did not smile. Sarah sat in a chair beside Adrian's bed, wearing one of his black coats over her diner uniform. When his eyes opened, they went immediately to her. "You stayed." She looked up from her coffee. "You sound surprised. I ordered them to move you somewhere safe." They tried. His gaze shifted toward the 2 enormous guards outside the door. One had a bruised cheek. Sarah smiled innocently. Adrian's eyes returned to her. "Elise, sleeping in the room next door. Millie is with her." Relief moved through him. Sarah reached for his hand. He watched their fingers interlace. "What happens now?" she asked. "To which part? The criminal empire, the daughter who barely knows you, the waitress whose apartment was burned down." "I bought the building." Sarah released his hand. "Adrian, I bought it before surgery. You were unconscious before surgery. I gave instructions in the ambulance." "That is insane. The building was unsafe." "So you bought it?" "I plan to demolish it. That was my home. I will replace it." She stood. His hand closed around hers. Not commanding this time. Afraid. Sarah looked down at him. I don't need you to replace everything I lose, she said. I need you to understand that my life isn't a problem you can solve with money. I know. Do you? His fingers loosened. I don't know how to do this. The confession was so quiet she almost missed it. Adrian Vale knew how to command armies, control unions, manipulate politicians, and terrify entire rooms into silence. He did not know how to ask a woman to stay. Sarah said again. Start with the truth. He looked toward the rain on the hospital windows. There is more. Her chest tightened. The night I was attacked, I was carrying information about you. Sarah became still. What information? Adrian's eyes returned to hers. Your father's name was Daniel Bennett. You knew my father? When I was 17, my father's enemies attacked me near a construction site. Daniel found me. He hid me in his truck and drove me to a clinic. Sarah stared at him. He never told me. I paid his medical bills after his accident. Her face changed. The anonymous foundation. The treatments her family could never have afforded. You did that? Yes. Why didn't you tell us? He asked me not to. Sarah stood and walked toward the window. Years of unanswered questions rearranged themselves. Did you know who I was when I found you? No. But you knew afterward, by the second day. And you said nothing. I was trying to determine whether our meeting was arranged. She turned. You thought I was part of the attack? For several hours. Pain crossed her face. Adrian looked away. I had your life investigated. Her stomach dropped. How much? Everything. That's why you knew Millie's cabin would be searched. Yes. You had people watching me? After the attack. Before? A pause. Sarah's eyes filled with disbelief. Before? Occasionally. How long? Since your father died. The answer struck harder than she expected. You watched me for 3 years? I made certain you were safe. You never spoke to me. I had no place in your life. But you had cameras in it? Not inside your home. That is not the defense you think it is. Sarah moved toward the door. Adrian tried to sit up. Pain stopped him. Sarah. She did not turn. I was wrong. She closed her eyes. The apology sounded unnatural in his voice. Difficult. Real. You don't get to call surveillance protection because you were afraid to introduce yourself. I know. You don't get to control my life. Because my father once saved yours. I know. And you don't get to hide the truth because you think losing me would be inconvenient. His expression broke. Inconvenient? Sarah faced him. I destroyed an empire because it endangered you. No. You destroyed part of an empire because it was corrupt. I stood unarmed in front of a man holding a knife to your throat. That doesn't erase the lie. I know. Then stop telling me what you sacrificed and tell me why you lied. Adrian looked at her for a long time. Because the first good thing I ever learned about you belonged to a debt. I needed what happened between us to belong to us. Sarah's anger faltered. He continued. If I told you your father saved me, every act of kindness between us would have become obligation. I wanted one person to choose me without owing me anything. The room became painfully quiet. You should have trusted me with that choice, Sarah whispered. Yes. She left. For the first time since discovering him behind the diner, Sarah walked away. Adrian did not send men after her. That frightened his organization more than any war. Sarah stayed with Millie in a hotel for 3 weeks. She returned to work when the diner reopened, though federal investigators visited twice and reporters waited outside every morning. Her photograph appeared online beneath headlines, calling her the mystery woman who saved Chicago's missing billionaire. Some articles mocked her uniform. Others discussed her body as if it were public property. They called her unlikely, ordinary, the plus-size waitress who captured a crime lord's attention. Sarah refused every interview. Adrian issued no public statement. But within 24 hours, every photograph taken without her permission disappeared from the worst websites. 3 reporters received legal notices. One television host apologized on air after making a cruel joke about her weight. Sarah knew exactly who was responsible. She was furious. She was also secretly touched. That made her more furious. Adrian did not visit. He sent no jewelry, flowers, or demands. Instead, a plain envelope arrived at the diner. Inside was the legal deed to Sarah's apartment building. Not in Adrian's name. In hers. There was one handwritten sentence. You were right. A home cannot be replaced. It can only be returned. Sarah stared at the note for a long time. That evening, Elise entered the diner wearing a navy coat and holding her stuffed fox. Adrian was not with her. Millie seated the girl at the counter and placed hot chocolate in front of her. Elise looked at Sarah. "My father said I'm not allowed to ask you to forgive him." Sarah's heart stopped at the word father. "He told you?" Elise nodded. "He said he was a coward. That doesn't sound like him." He used a longer sentence. Sarah smiled despite herself. Elise stirred the whipped cream. "He doesn't sleep. Did he send you here?" "No. Aunt Rebecca did." The girl looked toward the window. Across the street, a black SUV sat beneath the rain. A man was visible in the back seat. Adrian. He remained across the street because Sarah had asked for space. He was close because his daughter was inside, and because he still could not make himself stay away completely. Sarah removed her apron. She crossed the diner, stepped into the rain, and walked toward the SUV. The rear window lowered. Adrian looked thinner than before. A healing scar marked his temple, and exhaustion shadowed his eyes. "You shouldn't be out in this weather," he said. Sarah stopped beside the door. "That is the first thing you want to say?" "No." "What's the first?" "I miss you." The simplicity disarmed her. "Why didn't you come inside?" "You asked me not to interfere with your life. You bought my building. I returned your building. You threatened journalists. I threatened no one." "Adrian." "My attorneys were very persuasive." Sarah crossed her arms. Rain gathered in her hair. He opened the door and stepped out, holding an umbrella over her while allowing himself to become soaked. "Your daughter is drinking hot chocolate with a woman who once threatened a health inspector with a frying pan." "I know. Millie passed my security screening." "You investigated Millie?" "Thoroughly." Sarah stared at him. A rare hint of uncertainty entered his face. "I'm working on boundaries." "Work faster." "I will." The rain softened around them. "I'm still angry," Sarah said. "You should be." "I still don't trust you completely." "I will earn it." "I won't be hidden in one of your houses." "You won't." "I won't become a secret because you're afraid." His eyes moved toward the diner window, where Elise watched them. "No more secrets." Sarah studied him. "Who are you now, Adrian? Without half your empire?" His answer came without hesitation. "Her father." He looked at Sarah. "And whatever you will allow me to become to you." That was when she knew he had changed. Not because he had become gentle. Adrian Vale would never be gentle with the world. But he had learned to place his power in her hands, without closing his fist around hers. Sarah stepped beneath the umbrella. "You can come inside." His gaze searched her face. "That isn't forgiveness." "No." "What is it?" "A beginning." 1 year later, Millie's diner stayed open past midnight for a private celebration. The chrome counters had been restored. The red booths shone beneath warm lights. Framed photographs covered one wall, including a picture of Sarah's father laughing beside an unfinished building. Adrian had found it in an old construction archive. He had asked before hanging it. Elise sat at the counter, completing homework, while Millie pretended not to give her extra pie. Adrian occupied the corner booth in a dark suit. He no longer controlled Chicago's criminal world in the way he once had. He had transformed the legitimate portion of Vale Industries, dismantled several illegal operations, and testified privately against officials connected to Julian. Some called it redemption. Adrian called it restructuring. Sarah called it survival. She approached his booth, carrying coffee. "You've been here for 3 hours. I'm waiting for you. You own a penthouse with a chef. The coffee here is better." "It absolutely is not." He looked up at her. Adrian's expression remained feared in boardrooms and courtrooms across the city. It changed only for 2 people, Elise and Sarah. He reached for her hand. A year earlier, the gesture would have been possessive. Now, he waited until she placed her fingers in his. "I have something to show you," he said. Outside, light snow drifted over the city. Adrian drove Sarah and Elise to the apartment building, where everything had begun. The laundromat remained downstairs, newly renovated. The upper apartments had been restored for low-income families, healthcare workers, and service employees who could no longer afford the neighborhood. Sarah's old apartment on the 3rd floor had been rebuilt, exactly as it was. The same narrow hallway, the same tiny kitchen, the same second-hand sofa, repaired and cleaned. Her grandmother's yellow quilt lay folded across the back. Sarah stood in the doorway, unable to speak. "I thought you demolished it," she said. "I changed my mind." "Why?" Adrian looked toward the sofa. Because that room is the only place I have ever been powerless and safe at the same time. Elise ran to the window to watch the snow. Sarah touched the repaired arm of the couch. You remembered everything. I remember everything about you. He reached into his coat. Sarah gave him a warning look. If that is a diamond the size of a dinner plate, I'm leaving. It is not. He held out a small brass key. The building, he said. It remains yours. But this apartment can belong to us, if you want it. Sarah stared at the key. You want to live here? No. The security is terrible. She laughed. The sound filled the little apartment. Adrian's expression softened. I want us to keep it, he said. So neither of us forgets where our life began. Our life? His certainty faltered for the first time. Sarah realized he was nervous. Adrian Vale, who had once walked alone into an abandoned church surrounded by enemies, was afraid of her answer. She stepped closer. You still haven't asked me a question. His hand rose to her cheek. This time, he did not stop before touching her. Sarah Bennett, will you marry me? Snow drifted beyond the windows. Elise turned from the glass, holding her breath. Sarah looked at the old sofa where a dying stranger had once asked why she cared. Because you're here, she had told him. Now she understood the deeper truth. She had stayed because even beneath the blood, danger, and frightening silence, she had seen a man no one else believed could be saved. But she had not rescued him alone. Adrian had taught her that being ordinary did not mean being invisible, that her softness was not weakness, that courage did not always arrive with weapons or armies. Sometimes courage wore a stained waitress uniform, knelt in the rain, and refused to leave. Sarah took the key. Yes, Elise shouted and threw her arms around them. Adrian caught his daughter with one arm, and Sarah with the other. For a moment, the feared Mafia Boss stood in a tiny apartment holding the only family he had left. No guards, no emperor, no secrets. Only the woman who had found him dying behind a diner and changed the direction of his life by refusing to walk away. Later that night, Sarah stood at the apartment window watching snow settle over Chicago. Adrian approached from behind and wrapped his arms around her waist. His chin rested against her hair. The city looks peaceful, she said. It isn't. You always ruin romantic moments. I prefer honesty. Sarah turned in his arms. What are you afraid of now? Adrian looked at Elise sleeping beneath the yellow quilt on the sofa. Then he looked at Sarah. Losing this. You can't protect us from everything. I know. It was perhaps the hardest truth he had ever accepted. Sarah placed her palm against his chest, over the scar left by the bullet that should have killed him. But you don't have to face everything alone. His hand covered hers. The man who had once believed love was merely another weakness lowered his forehead to hers. Outside, Chicago glittered beneath the snow. Inside, beneath a leaking window that Adrian had already scheduled to replace, the most feared man in the city kissed the ordinary waitress who had become the center of his world. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Vale did not need power to feel safe. He only needed her to stay.